okay, instead of doing a sequel to the shitbomb that it is Spider-Man 3, they decided to completely reboot the franchise and sort of introduce new blood into the series, and hopefully to revise it. And we've known about this since 2010, like I think it was like the summer or whatnot, and this was before Social Network, which of course Andrew Garfield is the main protagonist, Peter Parker, Spider-Man. But is this the reboot that we needed, or should we have just gotten the sequel? There's really no point to talk about the origin of Spider-Man because everyone knows about the origin of Spider-Man. So what they've done is they kind of tweaked it, revamped it. They've kind of made it a bit more modern. So instead of like Spider-Man is this kind of like Peter Parker is the sort of the geek and whatnot that everyone picks on, like even the geeks don't like him. He's more of just like a sort of like outcast, or he keeps himself to himself, and he helps people, and some people really appreciate that he kind of helps them. But he just keeps to himself, and he somehow managed, and then obviously he does get sort of bit by the spider, and everything kind of leads off sort of to there. But what I quite like about it was this was more character development than the previous Spider-Man films. Like probably maybe the second one you could say was more character development. This one was strictly more character development, and I felt this film kind of needed that. The only problem is they didn't really develop like the villain, you know, the lizard, Kirk Connors, because they could have done really much more with him. Like, because obviously in the comics and even in the animated TV series, which is the most popular one, he had a family, you know, he had a wife and a kid. So, and you didn't really see any of that, and you know, quite annoying in that way. But also, right, when I first saw that Emma Stone was going to be in this film, I immediately thought this is going to be the perfect Mary Jane. Like, she is practically Mary Jane Watson. Nope, she plays Gwen Stacy. And at first that is quite a shock, but after seeing the film, she actually is pretty good as Gwen Stacy, and she does something that sort of the last Mary Jane does in every Spider-Man film is she's not a damsel in distress. She can basically look after her own, and because, you know, that, and because her dad was a cop, she's kind of used to the fact that her dad might not be back, you know, tonight or whatnot. So she's kind of used to that and quite sort of tough. But what about Andrew Garfield? Is he really good as Peter Parker? Yes, he is. Is he good as Spider-Man? Yes, he is. Like, it works really well for him, because if you don't, I might probably be veering back to the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans and whatnot, but when you watch like all three of them again, like, the Spider-Man there isn't really telling a lot of jokes or like being sort of witty, like the way that Spider-Man should be. And in this is the way I hear a lot of stuff that Spider-Man would say to someone and does, you know, and this is the Spider-Man I feel as though we should have had. And also, the costume, I actually like the costume, because the costume looks like something that I would make, you know, maybe you would make, because the costume in the Sam Raimi films are nothing more than what a, you know, a fashion designer would make. You know, it's too sort of perfect, as you will. Now, what about the kind of like the visuals of it? Like, most of like Spider-Man's action is during the night, but isn't that really what Spider-Man did when he was in high school? Like, you know, by day he was Peter Parker, by night he was Spider-Man, and mostly that's where all the crimes did. And because they stayed, in fact, in school, it worked really well, and there was actually quite a lot of action in this film, which is something really surprising. Like, there's actually a bit more action in this than that in the first Spider-Man sort of film. One other thing is though, I think with every kind of like origin, you know, it really is quite slow to begin with. Like, probably give what, 40 or so minutes after, you know, of just being a bit boring and whatnot, but then after that it's straight in there, fun, good time. Does it live for the title as The Amazing Spider-Man? Yes, it is amazing. It's a great film. It's going to get an 8.5 out of 10 for me. I think this is a must-see film for any sort of comic book fan. It's also for any sort of Spider-Man fan, they probably appreciate it sort of more. And also, don't go into this film thinking, oh, is it going to beat the Avengers or the Dark Knight? Because it's not going to beat it, because that's a completely different league of its own. But it is such a good time, and I think you'll probably like it.